Season 9, episode 33, number 381 of the Decoded podcast. That almost didn't happen because Chris may have said no. So here we are. It is happening.
I didn't say no.
You didn't say no, but I think we're good until September. And then maybe then,
Yeah. Maybe then I'll say no.
you'll say, hey, Chris, should we go live? No.
No.
I guess if you said that, I would ask you why. How come, Chris?
Are
And then
you okay, Chris? Are you
Well, I wouldn't even, you might, here's the thing about that. You could very well be okay. And that's why I wouldn't ask you if you're okay, because I'd be like, tell me more about why you're saying no, Chris.
Tell me more.
And then we'll see what you'd say to that.
I don't know what I'd say to that.
Well, that's because you weren't prepared to say no today, but maybe
That's
in
true.
September, you're like, I got to say no. This is my theme for the year.
I'm looking
morning,
forward
Gary.
to. Good morning, Gary. On the on-ramp, as I was saying, I'm looking forward to digging deeper into my designs for next year. One of the things that I've changed, I'm bringing it up here just because someone noticed, and I didn't think anyone would actually notice. So I don't think I've sent you any photos of the room that I'm in. Often I'll send you kind of like, here's what I'm doing in the room. There's not much any shit to see now because I've taken a lot of stuff down. I've taken the snaps of it, posted. Like what I'll do is I'll take photos of even my anchor charts and I'll just post them to the classroom under a resources tab. So then when I'm going through my design for the next year, I could just review my Google Classroom from the previous year and then decide, what I'm going to do with that. But I've stripped. I've officially, May means I start to take things apart and bring stuff home. And people still are kind of like, what are you doing? Where are you going? I'm like, I'm starting to pack up for the year. They're like, what do you mean you're starting to pack up? There's still, like, we've got 22 class days left, I think. And we're not even technically at the halfway mark through May. Like, well, but I start now because that's just a good thing to do. Like all things, it's good to do them in small pieces. And if I don't want to spend my last week hustling around trying to figure out, what's going to go home, what's going to stay there. So I might as well just bring a box home every once in a while. Like I'll pack it up, bring it home. And they're like, well, what, then your classroom's going to be bare. I'm like, yep, it is. Classroom's going to be bare. Now I'm also sharing a classroom. So any of the stuff I'm taking out, like my room partner hasn't really added much to it. He just uses my stuff, which is fine. I said he could. I have like these 6 storage boxes at the back of the room. And in it is basically all that's all I have. That's all I have for my traveling road show. So my setup in a new classroom, I can fit in those 6 boxes. And they're like these big industrial boxes. Stackable storage boxes. So I like that. I like being that agile. I like being that loose. It's funny, somebody in my department actually said, it was just this week, because we got our staffing for next year, like many schools have. And so everyone's like, chat, who got surplus? Chat, like all this chit chat, right? And then someone said, are you still, it's like they know me. Are you still in spec ed next year? Are you still with us? I'm like, oh yeah. Yeah. They're like, okay, good. Said, because I was going to ask you to come and help me organize my classroom. I'm like, oh, it was a nice little compliment. Someone noticed that I do think, like I set up, I build, I tear down, right? But in that, where I want to go back to is that I always look forward to this time of year where I just start to, like archiving the year. That's how I look at it. And I do drawings and I'll take photos of that and I'll put it on the Google Classroom too, just because it's all in one spot. I don't have to go looking for it. I'll take photos from around the class and just post it on Google Classroom as well. And the kids are like, what are you doing? Like, what's all this stuff you're putting there? And I said, it's reminders for next year. And they have a hard time kind of processing that because I really think they have no sense of how dynamic course design can be. They just have no clue, right? They arrive, they receive. They don't see behind the curtain necessarily, but I like putting it there. And they're like, and a couple of the kids are like, really? Like, that's how I said, well, think about this point of view. Like you take a science course and then you're going to take another science course. And it's kind of like going through your binder and deciding, okay, this is something good. This is something that I sort of look at it from the point of view of like, it's something that's obviously garbage. It was a one and done. I don't need it anymore. This has potential, and then this has memory. And I kind of work in those three different frames. I said, so if you if you if you say something has potential, then you have to put a deadline on it, as in it only will have potential until, and then at that point, you got to review it, throw it out, or put it into use. I said, otherwise, you're going to collect too much stuff. They're like, what do you mean? I said, well, go through your binder. Is there anything in there like with the periodic table? Would that be useful moving forward? Well, I'm going to get a new one. Right. But think about it this way. You've made some notes on this periodic table. You've done some scribbles in the margins. Is that by you interacting with this? Sorry, I got like something itchy in my nose, man. By you interacting with this periodic table and putting some edge notes on it and some, marking it up, does that make it more accessible to you as a piece of learning the next time you take science, next time you take chemistry or physics? They're like, maybe. I'm like, okay, so it has potential. So you would keep that. This page here that you've dated and it's a memory aid for a test. Would that be useful moving forward? No. Okay, so trash that right away. So I do that, and I actually have shown a few kids how to scale down their binders in the same way and take photos of stuff. So it's cool. Some people have kind of noticed my process this year. Um, and I will say the other thing that someone else noticed, that it took them quite a long time to do it, is I would say at least, well, I'll say at least, because of the numbers, I'll say at least once a week I book library time, and I will give like, if I know the kids are working on a task, the classroom that I'm in is a bunker, so there's no windows. So I can make it as calm and engaging as possible, but ultimately it's still a bunker. My classroom last year was uh, I had a whole bank of windows, so it had nice light. Like, it was a totally different vibe in the room. But I intentionally am booking the library, which still doesn't have windows, but it has space. So the kids can kind of spread out. They can relax in a chair. They can kind of, and it was just somebody the other day, because the English department's office opens into the library. So often English teachers are walking, there's a hallway exit, but they tend to come through the library first. I don't know why. But one of the English teachers, they kind of stop by. They're like, "Man, like, you're in here every week." And I looked at them like, "Yes, I am." But again, it's part of my course design. I know for the kids, for them to be able to, I look at it as an extension of shaking up the seating plan, which I've always done too. I adjust the seating plan, sometimes once a month. Uh, sometimes it's according to the coursework we're going to do. Sometimes I just want different kids to meet each other. So I adjust the playing field. Man, I talked a long time about this, but I think AI, if you were to go back through season 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, AI is going to find, and Gary, Rochelle, if you're both out there, you're welcome to go back through and check out the episodes in September where I talk about, and or sometimes it's late August, early December, where I talk about room design and using that as a third teacher. And then usually as soon as May hits, I'm talking about cleaning up the room and getting the hell out of there. Um, and I think that's excellent practice for every teacher to do. I think you need to strip your room at the end of the year. I think nothing should be left up on the walls over the summer. Nothing. And then you start again in September. And some people would be, and I say that goes the same for elementary. Same for elementary. And that might create a little bit of preciousness, like, oh, what about my anchor charts? I don't give a damn. Clean those walls, get it off the wall. A kid should not be returning to the exact same look that they left. They've grown. One of the surest ways, and someone, fight me on this, one of the surest ways that you can keep a kid from feeling like they are progressing, especially if they haven't helped them, they're in a class split and they happen to be in a 6-7, and then they're in first, they're in the sixth, then they're in the seventh. They got the same teacher, they're the same room. You wanna hamstring a kid and not have them fully feel like they have progressed or graduated and moved on, put them back in the exact same room with the exact same kids, with the exact same look and the exact same teacher. And you show me a kid like that, and I'll show you a kid that doesn't have the right amount of agency or sense of progression or sense of self-attribution that they can actually do new things because you're basically anointing them as the exact same kid. Now, I get it. I get it. There's also the argument to be made, but having a stable, secure, uh, measurable, quantifiable room can have a calming effect. So I would just suggest what's the middle ground? Start teaching your kids. If that's a concern, start teaching the kids that it's not, here's your reading station, here's your art station, here's your station of constant change. So there's going to be lots of stuff, different stuff popping up here, right? Switch the stuff up a lot. Do not, teachers, stop having the same bulletin boards all freaking year long. Stop it. Stop it. If you dare to do it, you have to switch it often. And you need to take stuff down, you need to send it home. That was a rant. I'm gonna take a sip. Fight me. Fight me.
Fight me on it. I don't
Fight me.
give a damn. I think
I know.
I think
I'm so earnest and petulant at the same time. You know what it is? This is the energy that I'm getting a little bit of a feedback loop because I don't have a specific creative outlet right now. So this is my creative brain eating me alive. Last weekend, the show closed, right? All that was kind of done, on and on we go. So I spent this whole week just looking for a way. I've been sitting in chaos, bro, just disrupting my own thinking because I don't have anywhere to put these creative options. I'm ADHDing myself to death here.
um
Mm.
I don't even I do know where to go. There's so many avenues. So the first and foremost, Rochelle, good morning. Happy long weekend.
Good morning, Rochelle. Bon matin.
Thanks, Rochelle and Gary, for joining us. So that's the first thing. Fight me, I don't give a damn. Dude,
I would love for us to maybe in season 10. Oh, our 10th anniversary season. Let's start introducing decoded debates. Maybe that's the year we invite a couple people in, or we just do we had talked about this actually, where we talked about homework somewhere around season 2, and we were going to take topics and kind of dig in and actually go and talk to people and bring it back here. But I would say this one would be great. This one would be great. I get to keep my class versus you don't get your class. You don't get to keep the same room every year, and just kind of really break it down. Sorry. I again, ADHD. I'm
no,
gonna take another sip.
it's all good.
I'm muting myself.
Okay, so I'm not fighting you. I'm just gonna tell you my perspective as an elementary teacher. I always did keep up my alphabet and my number line because I'm not taking those down because they're gonna go right back up. And I was just about to say everybody knows the alphabet and all the numbers, but that's not true. They don't in primary. So long story short, call me John or Bob. I'm leaving those up. But yeah, everything else for me would come down, like the word wall and the anchor charts. And I'm not going to get into the reasons why, but okay, yes. Okay, Rochelle gets it. Alphabet and numbers stay up. There's no reason to take them down unless you want to put them in a different place. But because they're so long, usually there's only one or two spots where they can go properly. No, bro, we don't cut shit up like that because then kids need the continuity. So I'm not going to fight you on this. I'm just telling you that no, we're not messing with the numbers in the alphabet. Now some might. Me and Rochelle and my wife, we're not chunking. No, I'm not getting into that with you. Okay, and Rochelle's saying the reality. I only have one. Don't make me mute you, Chris.
I'll mute myself.
I only have one wall that it can go on. This is the reality of our classrooms. We don't have as much space as everybody thinks we do. Anyway, oh, Rochelle's going off. Physical setup of the room. Okay. Oh, yes. Okay. I have a little bit of trauma because at the school that I worked at with Rochelle, F the wall, put it on the ceiling. Okay. Okay. Somebody call OSSTF on this guy. He's starting to lose it. We need somebody to represent him so he doesn't say anything to get himself in trouble. Um, some trauma. There was a point at the school where I worked at. Oh yeah, fire code. It's all about wall coverage percentage in fire code. So now, squirrel. I once worked at a school where the librarian came into my room. The librarian came into my room. I had a stack of
Take my
newspaper.
keyboard away. Take my keyboard away. I'm still a keyboard warrior here. I'm spamming the chat. I think in 10 years I've never put so many comments in the chat. Okay, I'm backing out. Doo,
I
doo,
had
doo.
I had a stack of newspapers like this. She comes in, she says, "Oh my God, what's that?" I said, "They're newspapers." She goes, "That's a fire problem." I looked at her, I said, "Your whole library is a fire problem. There's 8,000 million pieces of paper in there, and you're telling me that my stack of newspaper is gonna cause a fire, but the library's fine? Get the F out of my room." Now, her and I loved her. She loved me. We're still good. When I see her on Facebook, I'm like, "What's going on?" But I'll never forget, we laughed so hard. I was like, "You're calling this stack of newspaper a fire hazard when you work in a room that's filled with paper? Get the out of here." Okay, back to my trauma. The school I worked at with Rochelle, the proposed grade that I was going to get for the next year meant that I was going to teach about a third of my class again for the third time. And I said, no. I said, no. I'm like, no, it's not happening. I have to leave. I can't stay. Well, I can put you in grade eight. No, no, I don't want to teach grade eight. I told you I wanted to teach junior. And you're keeping me in junior, but you're bumping me up a grade and a split. And I'm going to have, and here was the list of kids, I'm going to have these kids again for the third year in a row. I said, so let's pretend for a minute. Let's pretend for a minute that I'm an all star educator and human, and I can teach and deal with whoever you put in front of me. I said, if that's our perspective, it's not fair to the kid. And Chris, it's not fair to Chris to have me again for the third year in a row. It's not fair. Now, we're not even talking about whether Chris and I get along or any of that. And Chris and I did get along. But I felt for this kid. I was like, that was just one example. I was like, no. So now let's add on the part about me being selfish. I don't want to teach that kid again for the third year in a row. We don't work in a country school with 6 kids population. Why is this happening to me? I have to leave. I can't stay. I can't do this. My morale's already broken from the year I just had. And the students in the room that had so many needs and became so disruptive, I'm sorry. I can't do this again. I have the same students 2 years in a row every year. Next year I get 6 for oh my God, Rochelle. Third year? Anyway, so there's a little bit of trauma there, Chris. And then there was something else. Oh, moving rooms. Moving rooms. Maybe this is this is a good time to share. So next year, I'm allowed to share. My principal gave me the green light. Next year, I'm supposed to be doing IEP monitoring and part-time guidance. So I am getting my wish of moving into guidance as a high school person. And you were asking me, we were talking about space for some reason. I told you I would get you video of the guidance department
Yep.
and where they think I might be. And that's exciting to me to have a dedicated space for me. And I'll probably be in a bunker. I probably won't have a window, but the workspace I have now, there's a window, but the classroom I'm in, there's no window. So I'm used to being in a bunker, I guess. But I'm already excited about how I can make that room mine. my little guidance space. So I need to do that. I need to do that. I need to show you the logistics. Thanks, Rochelle. I'm super pumped. The only other thing that could make me more pumped is if Gary gets moved to my school, which, that can happen, right? Um, it can happen. Not yet, but Gary's got a long admin career ahead of him, and I don't see myself leaving where I'm at unless there's a real problem. But anyway, um, so yeah, spaces. Thanks, buddy. Thanks, Gary. Spaces. Gary, you'd be interested in hearing too the plan that they think that they have for me on where I'm gonna go. It was funny because one of the guidance, so I can share a little bit of this here, I think, because I don't think I'm saying anything wrong. But when my principal, when he told me his plan for me next year, at the end of our conversation, he's like, just can you keep this under your hat for now? Because like there's a lot of moving pieces. And I said, yeah, of course. I said, let me know when I can talk about it if I want to talk about it. And he's like, yeah, no problem. So, okay, great. Slowly, what's been happening is people have been saying things to me about guidance, but I was trying to stay true to my word and not talk about it. Um, so people would say stuff and I'd kind of nod and say, where did you hear that? Or like, hey, how did you find out about this? Like, how did this come to be? Trying to ask them things and saying things without me saying, yeah, you're right. He said I could go to guidance because I was asked not to do that publicly. Um, so the straw that broke the camel's back, if you will, was I got a calendar invite to a guidance event next year. And I sent an email back to the guidance counselor, and I sent 3 chaotic, frenetic emails all within 10 minutes. I would say one thing, hit send, then I would say another thing, hit send, then I'd say a third thing, hit send. So then she called me, and we had a good laugh on the phone. I'm like, "Yo, like" I'm like, "I know the guidance department knows now. You've been informed. Like, I don't have the green light to talk about it." So and she's laughing on the other end, and she's saying, she's like, "I don't wanna cause you any problems, but we've been told, like, at our last meeting, it came up, we're getting some more guidance, and Roland's coming down to guidance." And so, like, our people have been given the green light to share with our people, and I'm like, "Yeah, that's cool, and I appreciate you involving me and stuff, but, I feel welcome, but I'm not talking about it." So then the funny thing is when I finally got the green light to talk about it, I didn't wanna talk about it because 'cause I'd become accustomed to not talking about it. So another person came up to me and said, "Hey, you're going to guidance." I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "How do you feel?" I'm like, "Great." And they're looking at me waiting for more. I'm like, "I don't wanna talk about it." And they're like, "Why?" And I said, "Because I'm allowed to talk about it now, but I don't want to." Like, I already I told my wife, you know, Gary knows, like, everybody who needs to know, no offense, Rochelle, but, like, I don't talk to you on the phone or anything. I'm like, the people who need to know, right? The people I wanna share with my good news, they know. I don't need to tell anybody else, they'll figure it out. So all that to say, I go down to guidance the other day to talk to this one counselor who's I guess maybe she's been anointed the one to invite me to everything and tell me everything I need to know. She goes, "Do you know where your office is gonna be?" And she had a big smile on her face. I said, "Yeah, probably outside." And I pointed, like, outside the window, like, in the grass area. I'm like, "I know that there's no room here, so somebody'll just create a cubicle somewhere, I imagine." And she laughed and she goes, "Well, there's a couple of things people are talking about." And so I told you that I would show you the guidance hub. So there's a good chance I'm not gonna be in the guidance hub, but I'm gonna be close enough that, I just walk across a hall and be like, "Hey, who's here to meet with me? Come on over across the hall to my space," which is fine. Like, I'm just happy that I get to be in guidance, that I get to flex kind of who I am in that role. and in that space and learn all those things. Um, and it's gonna be a slap to the face. I know there's a lot to learn. There's never enough time to teach everybody everything, so I'm just gonna learn as I go, just like I did with the job I do now. And thank God, like, I understand my current role and that I understand the IEP writer system that we now have. Thank God for that, because I know enough that it shouldn't stretch my operating system to a point where I freeze a lot. So hopefully that I keep rolling with that and then learn the guidance stuff on the side as best as I can and as moments come up and I learn new things. So that's what I wanted to say. So thanks for letting me, thanks for that. Thanks for not fighting me, Chris. Um, Now we're gonna get into some of your comments. So, oh, Rochelle's off to baseball. Have a good one.
Peace.
Enjoy your weekend. No room is dedicated to any one teacher or content area, except when specialized equipment or infrastructure is needed.
Now
Well,
back it up. You got to back it up to give
oh,
me this
sorry.
what my list actually is. So just before Gary's comment, there's a
Oh,
reason I'm putting these things there. So a couple comments back, it's just the way that it listed out. So chaotic rules that encourage vibrancy. So that was my whole hot take here on some stuff. Yeah, because I understand that this suggestion will cause chaos, but I also understand that by causing chaos and supporting the process, we will come out on the other side with better versions of programming and better strategies to support kids. Hands down, fight me.
I'm not gonna fight you, but I am gonna say, okay, so chaotic rules that encourage vibrancy. This doesn't happen. So how do we deal with the gap between so if you're an administrator
Mhm.
running the show, it's your building,
Yep.
you are gonna take time out of your administrative and personal life to make sure that this happens?
Right.
Okay, then
So
this is good because
yeah,
we
yeah.
know
If
that
yeah, okay. So you're seeing my like these would be the hills that I would choose to I won't die on it, but I will go deep in my research. I will go deep in my culture adjustment. I will go deep in my equity, my spec ed, everything in the pursuit of classrooms. Classrooms are for in its equal measure, programs and students first. Programs and students first. The next layer would be, let's say, the teacher, really, but that would be a distant second. The classroom is not there because the teacher because it's good for the teacher. Now, I will backtrack just on that because one of the exceptions, I don't have enough space here to put all my exceptions in. But the truth of it is that there will be some teachers that will be on DM. So maybe they can't go to the second floor. Maybe they need to have a classroom very close to where they park because the mobility to that spot. Like there's a lot of reasons. Yes, we would absolutely do that. So what my chaos is meant to do is to chip away at the calcification on the thinking that teachers get to camp out in a classroom forever and it becomes habit, not pedagogy. That's what it is. It becomes convenience, not equity. And I really do see a cost at that. I walk through my classroom and I'm like, this classroom is a dumping ground. It's the in the worst case scenario, it's the broken window theory, as in somebody forgets to really pay attention to what they're doing to the room and it looks like a dump. They've got their personal stuff in one corner. They've got the coffee machine filthy in the other spot. They have their jacket and their laundry basket there because they're running to do laundry after school. There are elements of our personality that I absolutely do think of our person and our personality that need to exist in the classroom as the adults in there. I am the person I want you to share, but also because it isn't our locker, it isn't our car, it isn't our personal space. And I feel the constant tension of respecting the space, and that leads to respecting ourselves. So the common intuition here is you push your chair and you pick up your garbage, you sweep up the floor, you wipe off the boards, and you take your stuff home. Or you organize it in your desk. So I think this part of the dark side of the number one is that, and even though I've worked at 6 different high schools, I'm still not a specialist in this, but I do see a firm association between anointing a space. When you anoint a space with a purpose, it is really hard to extricate that. Now, that's a really good thing, i.e., you want people as soon as they walk in the gym to have all of the markers that you are stepping into a gym and you're about to get physical. You're about to do exercise. You want those things, right? This I would put in the specialized equipment, specialized room category. You walk into an English classroom, you have to be a little bit more shrewd about it. What do you put? Can you tell me that by putting the ABCs up on the wall, that there's a direct correlation to the kids growing their understanding of ABCs? Now, you could give me a whole diatribe on how the connection there is. But I think that shows your wisdom, that shows your depth, that shows your thinking about room design and using the room design as a third teacher. If you're putting it up there because you're Pinterestizing and saying, well, that's just what goes on an English class or a language arts wall, then you're just shoveling bullshit in my mouth and I ain't going to eat it. I'm going to push it back and say, that's not a good reason to put on the wall. You don't get to put it there just because you're an English teacher. You don't get to put it there just because you're a history teacher. You don't get to put it there just because you're a math teacher. We have to be smarter than that. Because otherwise you show me someone that does that when they walk in a room. I will go another route. You show me someone who actually designs their whole classroom in August, and I will show you a teacher that's blind to their students' needs. Kids walking into a fait complete finished classroom on the first day of class tells them, I have to work to exist here because I don't see any of myself here. So I think you have to be very, 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 very shrewd in the artifacts you hang on the wall. And it can't look like your own bedroom and it can't look like your rec room. So one of the ways to destabilize this, if I were to sort of pursue this, I pursue it in conversations, is that no room is dedicated to any one teacher or content area. So specialized equipment and infrastructure, because there are rooms that have like our multiple exceptionality classroom. There are design elements that are universal design elements that have to be there. AKA, they have a bathroom lift. You can't move that bathroom lift. It has to be installed somewhere. Do you know what a bathroom lift is? Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like that's a major piece of hardware, very expensive piece of hardware. Major training comes along with that. So you're not pulling it down and hanging it in a new classroom somewhere. So go ahead, dude. Go.
So the history teacher on the 3rd floor in room 316, who's been in there since, I don't know, 20 years, you're now walking into the building and you're saying, hey, guys and gals, everybody else, there's no room's going to be dedicated to any one teacher or content area. So they may be moved. Or sorry.
You're my answer to that, you're welcome to move on to point number 2.
What do you mean?
My next suggestion on there, number 2.
Teachers with mobile content must, what's mobile content?
It's a poster on the wall.
Oh, okay.
Anything
Teachers with mobile content must pitch to admin why admin the why behind their room needs. So 20-year history teacher is going to walk into your office and be like, I've been in this room for 20 years. I've got all this history stuff everywhere.
Doesn't qualify. I'll tell them flat out, stop, doesn't qualify. You're talking about you, not the program.
Okay. I'm not even going to go deeper on that. I'm just like, fair enough. Okay, 3. All wall coverings and resources must earn its space. If it's not an active element in the learning, it needs to be in process to be archived and accessible digitally. Okay. I get that. And those are your 3 things.
Oh,
Okay.
no, I could keep going.
Oh,
I just
sorry,
put a
sorry. Those are the
yeah,
3 things you've
yeah, yeah.
listed here. Oh,
I put a fourth up. You've inspired me, so I've
anything in a classroom is a student resource.
now that becomes tricky because if you're the teacher that brings your bike into your classroom, if you're the teacher that brings your coffee machine into the classroom,
What if the kids are allowed to make coffee or hot chocolate or something?
that's actually not a thing unless it's part of the programming.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So,
Yeah, you're not I do not think that a classroom should have a tea station unless it's connected with programming.
interesting. So
Oh, yeah.
even in but you were talking about specialized areas, so even like my space or a student success space where we have kids that come in to regulate
Well,
and
here, I'll
does
put
that
it to you
work?
this wait for it. Who's
Okay.
paying for it?
Um, that's a good question. That's a good question.
Because the
I don't
school won't.
then I oh, the school won't, I guess if you're the administrator, the school
No,
will.
the school won't.
Well, some
There
might,
no,
some may have.
you're gonna be squeaky. There is so few programs, so few, Gary can chime in on this, so few programs that you would actually be able to give permission for food and drink, let alone the fact that some schools also say, according to safety rules, you're not permitted to have a coffee machine or a kettle in your room. So
I
again, so if it's a part of a life skills class, okay, there's going to be language in there that says, okay, a percentage of their budget, the department budget can be used for that. But what about, let's say, the geography teacher that decides to have a calming corner and they have a tea? Okay, so the problem there is that that won't be paid for or legally shouldn't be paid for by department money. So who's paying for it? And the only other place that can come from is the teacher, which I fundamentally disagree with. The teacher should not be paying for their own tea corner. So that's why I say that. That's hands down. I say teachers should not be they should not be they need to limit how much of their own paycheck is being put into programming. Are they going to? No. But this is where I would draw a line. I'm like, no. I said, don't do it. Do not do it. And if it's
you
not a part of programming, don't do it.
you and I both know that it happens though.
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
I was in a classroom the other day. There's a microwave in the room behind the teacher's desk. A microwave, and it's plugged in. And in my board, that's one of those. It's kind of a funny thing. Like you can have it sitting there, but to have it plugged
Plugged
in and
in.
plugged into an extension cord that has other extension cords in it, like my union would be all over the safety of that. All over the safety of that. So even in some of our community classrooms, fridges were pulled out, microwaves were pulled out. You're not permitted to have them in there. There's some exceptions there depending on the community classroom. But for example, the room that I was in 2 years, the last 2 years, the year before that, so 4 years ago, just before I came in that room was a fridge, there was a microwave, and they even had a skillet that they would crack out every once in a while.
I
And
love it.
all of that was removed. They're not permitted to have that stuff anymore. So yeah. So the resources in the class, this what I mean by that is that if you dare to have something in the classroom, it's there because the students can access it. I got into a little it wasn't trouble, but it was I think the person bringing it to me was bringing it to me like I kind of was in trouble, but during the
Mm.
course of the conversation, I'm like, this isn't even a conversation. I just walked away from it. When I'm so last semester when I came out of my community classroom and I started teaching learning strategies, the classroom I went into, there were like shelves and shelves of books and all this kind of stuff, and it was just all out. And I took it all out, I put it on the table, and I looked to see what department it was, and I said to the department head, come and get your books. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, I have a full set here of this novel. We haven't studied this novel as part of spec ed or learning strategies curriculum in 5 6 years. And they're like, we have nowhere to put it. I said that I'm going to put it in the main office in our photocopy room, and I'll just give it away. They came and got it. They stacked it on the floor in their book room, which is fine, right? It's fine. It's whatever. But I was just pointing out, like, I didn't have anything on the shelves in the room that the students couldn't touch, adjust, use, examine, play with. Any materials that were not actively in use were packed up. I just, again, these are chaotic rules to increase or encourage vibrancy. And confusion and tons of stuff on the wall is not vibrancy. It's either decor or clutter. And I don't want that. I don't want that in my classrooms. I want to be able to say, folks, look over there at the east wall or that wall over there, and for them to follow my line of sight. I point over to it, and on that wall is they are able to discern that single thing that I need for them to look at. I don't need it surrounded by a pretty border. You can do it if you want. I don't need it to sort of be in multiple different fonts. You could do that if you want. I don't need to have it in big color. I just need for it to have a purpose on the wall there. And sometimes for me, it's just to derail where the lesson is in monofocus to the front, and I'm starting to lose some of the kids. I like being able to say, hey, yo, just have a look over here. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, what's going on? So you kind of like, you're using cueing systems to wake them up. So again, using the room as a third teacher and sometimes as a secondary distraction, just to keep the kids kind of like active in their own learning. Yeah. And earning the space is really important. Does the resort still look good? Is it still clean? Does it still hang well? Do you need to replace it? That's a way for it to earn its space on the wall too. It still looks good. It's still provocative. It's still
I like that idea, but not about how it looks, more about its usefulness. So
yep. You decide what's going to capture your student. The only way that you can, I would sort of flip that and agree with you, is that you do the work to figure out what captures your student's attention.
I disagree with that. I mean, look, I'm talking anchor charts. I'm talking success criteria, the things that they want on our walls. So if the information that's my administrators directing me on what's going to be on my walls.
So just to clarify, that would have vibrancy because you would only have the success criteria for the current learning.
That's my idea. Like
so then we're in the same zone. We're in the same zone. Like
no, what I'm saying though is it doesn't need to capture anything. Doesn't need to capture their attention.
I would say
but
if it doesn't,
can't control that.
If it's just okay, sure, but we can
control that just like what we were talking about before we jumped in. There are certain
you're nudging. What I've come to understand is that for some kids, if you decide to put up white anchor paper and you use black marker just on white anchor paper and you write in all caps, and I just say this truly, you write in all caps. If you're in a classroom where reading at a distance or reading in general is still a developing skill, they are more likely to be able to, one, decode that that's letters on, black writing on white paper. Two, that they'll be able to sort of understand the lexicon, the letters, because they're capitals, and capitals tend to be more clear than lowercase with the hanging tails and the fancy sort of like if there's any sort of serif fanciness to it. So that in itself, in its plainness, is capturing attention. So capturing attention would just be, as they look at it, creating the shortest possible route for them to start decoding what the thing is on the wall. That's all. That's where I say. Now, you can do art to actually hold attention, highlighting, colors, positionality on the wall. But I'm just saying off the jump, if you have let's say an anchor chart that has a success criteria for writing a sentence, and you have that totally enclosed by a multicolor bulletin board with other distracting elements on it that will not capture the kid's attention. So I get it. Admin is saying, sure, put it up. But then I would argue the usefulness of that, because any kid looking at it right away is like, oh, that colored backboard or that photo, that interesting photo or that piece of art of mine beside that artifact that the kid needs to learn from will pull them out of it. They're going to chase that squirrel instead of stay on task, which could be, everyone check out the success criteria.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I also know there's limited space.
Mhm,
There's all kinds of things. My thing is this: what's gonna be up on the wall is gonna be either work that's being celebrated for whatever reason, success criteria, and anchor charts that are needing to be in use by the entire class at a certain time period.
mhm.
Other things are I used to have a space for anchor charts and success criteria that kids could refer to. So, like, you work on a particular math idea,
Mhm,
but now you've moved on to another math idea. There's no way you can have, and nor should you have, all the charts that you created for every math idea concept up on the wall. That's insane. That's chaos, and it's not good chaos. But if the student says to me, "Oh my God, now Mr. C, hey, I'm entering into geometry,
mhm,
but I don't remember the rules for this or the idea for that." I'm
mhm,
like, "No problem." I used to take photos of the charts, print them off, put them in a binder. Binder's over there. It's like you can refer to the actual chart that's in that back corner that's being housed over there. But that's crazy because they got to flip through a million charts to get to that one. Or
mhm,
you can go to the binder. That's when I was really on my game. And then so it was available, right? Because it's an anchor chart. It's going to help them move forward with their learning, but it's not. I don't have 10,000 charts on the wall because, um, 9,998 of them are not what we're talking about right now. We're only talking about these two. This idea as well, I think whatever you put on the wall has to be developmentally appropriate. So when you were talking about all caps, well, you shouldn't do that in a primary classroom where they're still learning about uppercase and lowercase letters, because then what are you modeling for them? You're like, the kids are going to start imitating you. It's like, whoa, whoa, you all your letters are capitalized. That's not how we write a narrative or whatever the situation is. So I think we're on the same page. Um, I guess if you're my principal, I'm gonna have to hide that mini fridge under my desk so that when you walk in and look around, you don't see it off the bat. Because I'd like to keep my food cold. Microwave, I do agree. If I had one in the room, I'd probably keep it unplugged. I only plug it in when I want to use it, and then unplug it when I was done heating up my food.
You would also, if I guess if I were your principal, you would get the email warning that you need to take it home,
Oh,
telling you it will be removed from the
all
classroom
yeah,
tomorrow.
all personal stuff.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
non-pro non
Sorry,
non
non-school,
non-programming, anything that's not a part of programming, right?
which
So
could be a lot of stuff for a lot of teachers.
it could be, and I think we would start to see the space between teacher pocketbook and classroom resources very quickly, because that's usually what that reveals when you start to tell teachers to take their shit home, whatever that conversation looks like. And that can start with, you can't have your tea kettle in there anymore. You can't have your microwave, like that kind of stuff. Because obviously the kids did not bring that. They're not, right? Very few kids are coming to school with their own tea set.
That would
Yeah.
be funny though.
It would, and I have met some pretty quirky kids that they actually do, like, in the top of their locker, they have, like, their own little sort of tea kit, and they'll go to the caf at lunch, and the caf, I think, has, like, a hot water dispenser, and they're not doing their ramen thing, they're actually going in with their ceramic mug and their chamomile tea bag. We do have some quirky kids that will do that, and that's awesome. I love it when kids rock that kind of stuff. But my intent in this would not to be the closed-minded admin. I'm coming from the other perspective of being the divergent thinking teacher. And I think my suggestions come from the perspective of, I'm not looking to come and dismantle and take your room apart, but I'm going to start from the position of, I'm okay with sharing space with other teachers, but the cost will be, I will shake up that room as needed. So being a room, anything that I've done in the room that I'm in right now, I've had open conversations with. So I'm in there for 2 periods, and the other teacher's in there for 2 periods. Now, he's been really kinda great. He's like, "Yeah, do whatever you want." I said, "Okay, but let's align it with what you're doing in class." So I'm even caring I'm being a caregiver to his pedagogy. So, for example, as I move into my final unit, the students I'm gonna be direct teaching study skills. So I have a whole list of how do you actually study? I don't want any kid to say that when they're asked if they studied, first to feel like they have to lie. Yeah, I studied. Second, that when they're asked that, they actually know what that means, what it means to study. And third, that studying, yes, can be just looking at your notes, but it has the lowest return compared to other study methods. So as I do this, I need to have a fairly flexible room setup because I'm going to have the kids working in different groups. Um, and so every time, one of the things that this happens is I switch up the seating plan. And I asked him first, and he's like, "Yeah." I said, so I showed him the drawing of what I want to do. He's like, "Yeah, that'll be fine." And I said, "Are you sure? Is this in alignment with the actual unit that you're going into next?" And he's like, he said, "Well, I don't know." So he's not in a space where he's actually measuring these things, which is fine. But I didn't want it to negatively impact what he was gonna do. And that can happen easily with a new seating plan, right? Because it all of a sudden can put certain kids side by side naturally. It can sort of change how kids look at the front of the room, or if you have a certain space they need to look at. But he was open to it. He was open to it. And that's been really useful for me because I am dynamic in that way. I look at where the kids are. I try and deregulate bad habit patterns. I then discuss about the habit that I see, and I say, here's one path where you can start to build it. I'm going to assume you want to get better, become more efficient, more skilled. So it's like that assume positive intention. I do it by assuming my version of that in teaching is I assume growth, that a kid wants to grow. And I'll tell them directly, you're not growing because of where you're sitting and who you're sitting beside and the habits that come out of that. So we're going to move you around. So that's the cost of sort of sharing a room with me. So instead of focusing on, telling administrators to come in and start changing the system, I'm going to be the change that I want to see. So I'm going to sort of actively do these things. And then when I kind of rub up against someone who does it differently, I'm going to have that conversation. Here's why I operate this way. And then they get to choose. They get to choose. I know of at least one person that has said they never want to share a room with me again. That wasn't at the school I'm at. It was a previous school. But it was for
Again,
that reason because I was changed. They said flat out, I would worry in the morning driving to work what you had done to the room because I had P5, they had P1. So yeah, I actually was in there 4 or 5 and they were in their P1. It wasn't used for 2 and 3, but they said, and if that's where we're at, then we need to have a conversation.
so who'd they tell that they didn't want to share a room with you anymore?
Me,
Oh, they said to you, "I do not want it," but you have no control over that.
that's exactly what I said.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, well, we're rolling the dice. So
Why wouldn't they just have gone to admin and said, "I can't share a room with this guy. Can you make sure that doesn't happen next year?" I don't think that's a huge, crazy demand.
no, but so what do you do then? So Gary, what would you do?
Well, if somebody came to me and said, "I can't share a room with Chris anymore," I'd say, "Okay, well, what's up? Like, what's up?"
Sure.
And they would
So you entertain the conversation, then what?
well, it
There's no
depends.
rooms. There's no rooms,
Well, why
right?
can't they share a room with somebody else?
So okay, so we put that the logistics of moving classrooms and switching rooms around. I
Not like in the middle of a semester. Like, I'd be considering it for the start of next year. Like, I wouldn't.
I guess yeah, going into a new schedule, you can
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can
that's what I mean. I don't mean
I would argue though, get put it to Gary, and he might not answer. I don't know. Maybe he will. He'll put it in the chat. Gary, would you ever prioritize a request like that? You've been here for the whole pod. Would you prioritize that request? Now he doesn't have to answer because again, that's a deep dive into his own admin. From my experience, it would be, oh, okay. And then you're not going to prioritize that.
I didn't know that, I assumed I made the assumption that this person at the end of a semester is like, "Yeah, I don't wanna do this again, so I'm gonna talk to somebody about not having to be connected to you anymore." I
Mhm.
didn't know. So you're talking like they wake up on a Monday in May and they're like, "I can't do this anymore." Um, I guess if they came to me as an administrator, I'd be like, I would listen to them because that's our job. When I'm not gonna say turn around and leave, I'm not having this conversation.
Right.
Uh, if they start getting into if they start getting into union territory, I'd be like, "Well, have you called the union? Because it sounds
This
like there's."
this would never be entertained by my union.
Okay, so the union would say, "This is not for us."
No. Because there's not a grievance there. It's a personal complaint that actually it's a personal complaint that you really there's no offense being done. And now understand, I wasn't doing stuff like seating plans. No, like I wasn't switching the seating plan. But what they didn't like is all of a sudden sometimes my materials would be right up beside their materials.
I
I
don't
would bring in
understand, so
an
give me an example.
what's that?
Give me an example.
Oh, okay. So, often with my students, the something that they were working on, what I like to do was we would do what a week. So the what a week activity would be we would gather on the Friday and we would do word association, just key words that remind us about the week. So I would do this on anchor charts. And it would give the kids an opportunity to give their perspective on what they noticed about the week in our classroom or about in the school. And then what I asked them to do, so everyone got a chance to get up and write words on there, and it was messy. It was kid work. It was messy. The only thing is, at the top I would put WAW, and then I'd put the date beside it. So that was all mine, and it was all in caps. And then the kids would write the different words on this chart, and we would fill up an anchor chart. And then what I would ask them to do, I would say, okay, this is week 4. As we go, week 4, you gotta pick 4 words off this and create a statement based on those 4 words in the week. You could talk about the week, or it could just be a couple few statements. So we were doing some low level kind of presentation skills, some creativity. So I had 1 for each week. 1 for each week, that I would only keep the month's worth. The other ones I photoed, I hung on the Google Classroom. Where I would leave that in the class, sometimes it was tacked to the board. Sometimes I had it on the anchor chart. I had like a standing thing, but it often would be near or obscuring stuff that they had put on the wall the day before. So, is that chaos? No. Um, is there could that be bothersome? Yes. But sometimes if they started to use we had a bulletin board in this one corner that was just a bulletin board, like it didn't have stuff on it. One particular case, they had a essential geography class that I was sharing with. They had something about latitude and longitude. It was something about compass reading, and they had stuff up on the board. I moved it over and I put mine up on the board and I tacked it there. And so they had come in, they're like, you put your stuff right up beside my stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's our shared board. And they didn't like that. They wanted their stuff because I guess they were continuing their lesson. They were going to do something else with it. So that's like just one example. One example. Um, I brought plants in because we were actually doing um, this class had a life skills element to it. So we were growing flowers that we were going to sell. And it was on one of the back half of the class was all windows and it was the right light. We could grow plants. It was perfect. Um, and they didn't like that I put it near the sunny spot because it caused shadow on a spot where they would have their classroom come and sit and do reading of something. They had some sort of reading task. So yeah, it was this constant like there was interaction there between two different curricular areas, and it didn't always result in a okay, cool. Sometimes it was like I want this space. but I think this is the necessary tension that you need to have. I think this just creates, in this case, they didn't want the stress of it. They still liked me. They just didn't want the stress of dealing with my um, evolving teaching. So
Thanks for the examples. I
yeah,
get it. Um, Gary says this has left me thinking and reflecting on how to be intentional and purposeful in how I put together my office. Um, I have things to say I'm not going to say. And then Gary says there are limited reasons mid-semester to move classrooms, and the why the move is being requested is important in considering all moves. So there's Gary's perspective. And I just made the assumption that it was dude, I don't want to be in the same room as you next semester. So I'm going to let admin know that please, I don't want to be in the same room as Chris next semester. And I think that's a little bit more reasonable. But as Gary's saying, if something happens mid-semester and there's a request, well, you listen to the request and then you go from there. I guess admin doesn't always say yes to everything. So I
there's
know
a
that.
great phrase that I've heard, and I do think it's. I don't think it's in the handbook, admin handbook. Thank you. I appreciate you letting me know. Full stop. And you can interpret that however you want. But I think it firmly this particular idea would fall directly into that. You'd listen. You might write a couple things down, and then you'd say, "Thank you. I appreciate you letting me know." No commitment. No commitment. You'll need, especially if it's brought to you and it feels like a bit of a surprise, you're going to sort of do your investigation and whatever on the side. You're going to make sure this actually isn't a union thing. You're going to make sure that there isn't actually sort of like real acrimony between the individuals. You might even go into the marking system and see, is this negatively impacting the marks? There's a whole lot of sort of sidebar stuff that you'll do before you say, Roland, can we talk a little bit more about this classroom situation that you described to me a month ago? And then summer happens. So some admin may intervene. I imagine they would be very cautious because at the same time, they may be receiving what sounds like a soft complaint from one teacher. I know from an administrative perspective, sometimes that's the professional development that teacher needs. And so you're going to let it ride out because you may say to yourself, I think it's kind of cool that they're working with Clough because this is something that I've wanted them to sort of notice in themselves and they haven't yet.
Mhm.
This is a real thing. Admin has a lot of different things to do. Actively setting up mentorship between teachers sometimes is you need to be really kind of like strategic in how you sort of make the suggestion. Thank you for letting me know. I appreciate you telling me. Can be code for spend a little time checking out what Clough's doing. You could use a little shakeup in your pedagogy. So I'm not saying I'm the one that should be doling that out. I just know that in talking to enough admin, if someone is doing the good job and it bothers somebody, sometimes you're okay with that person being bothered.
I get that. But I'm
They
also concerned about why they can't say to the individual what that person's doing's good stuff. Maybe you should pay
mm,
attention.
mm. I think part of it, probably at that point, well, if I use the example you've shared and you're talking about, how cool it is when administrators do share out that they've noticed good work. I think the when of doing that is probably overthought a little bit. It's good just to sort of tell people that you do appreciate their work. In this particular case, I had no I did not. I knew that admin was on my side for the type of program that I was doing. I had more than enough supportive conversations and even curious conversations about how I was doing that class, and admin showing up often to class, like kind of checking out, oh, like what's Clough doing today with the kids. So when this was brought to me, when the teacher said it to me, I responded like I would expect an admin would respond. Thank you for letting me know. I appreciate you telling me that. I made no commitment to change. They didn't actually ask me to change. They just commented that they're constantly anxious coming in the morning.
Can you
Okay.
give us some stats? Was this a younger teacher, older teacher, newer teacher, veteran teacher? I'm just trying to get a flavor
I would
for.
say it probably a 10-year teacher.
Okay.
So beyond beginner, not quite into, senior.
So, like, just completed their first third kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But and again,
And you
established.
guys got along? Like, there
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah,
acrimony or
yeah.
it
No,
was
no, no.
okay,
No, they just flat out said there was a conflict of style.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Have you seen this like, did you guys end up in the same room again the next year?
I switched schools. So
Okay,
it was I just as it happened, that was just before I transferred down to the school that I'm at. So, mhm,
gotcha.
mhm. So that was in first semester. That was in first semester.
Oh,
So second semester stuff naturally changed up. I think that was the year 2. I think it was in second semester. I switched to a completely different classroom, but I don't remember where they went. I don't remember.
okay, so they weren't with you again for a second semester.
No, no, and yeah, I don't know, and again, never taught. I think it was just the universe it was the scheduling
Mhm.
program that ended up making that happen, because it was also I think that was the year we that was a year of change in general, so a few people were feeling a little bit of heat, like, heat and feeling a little destabilized because the school got new programs in that were mandatory by the board, which ended up meaning that teachers that had been in classrooms before, those classrooms were used and specialized equipment was put into it. So those teachers, the programming had to move. So if in some cases, the teacher was still associated with the programming, they felt a little destabilized because they were in a new room. Any new teacher that was assigned to some of those programs didn't know any different because they were just new to the room, so to speak.
Mhm.
So stuff that was a year of change in general, which could have also been playing into their anxiety. Like stuff was changing, talking of surplus, all the staffing, yada yada yada, new programs coming in. If you're coming in, like really in a school, if you're if you're in your first 10 years, I would say even more so now, there is the possibility that you could be surplused. Like you're not quite deep enough. You could be surplused, as in sort of like, depending on enrollment, your position may not be stable at that school. We're even seeing that now at my school, right? Like teachers that have been in place for 5, 6, 7 years, creeping up on that point where you think like you can just kind of focus on wellness and establishing yourself, kind of root yourself at that school. And teachers are being like, you're going to be surplus this year. You're not protected by a specific position or a POR, so you could be surplused. Tricky times. Staffing is tricky times. So that could have been playing into their anxiety as well. Could have been.
Cool. Anything else you wanna drop before we go?
Nah, nah. I'll, I'm all good. I'm feeling nice and chill. It's a long weekend, eh? Like it's
Oh,
just I'm not quite clocking into that, but I'm happy about that.
yeah, I'm happy about it too.
In
Oh,
4 weeks ish, about 4 weeks, let's say 5 weeks, we are done season 9.
great. Well, yeah, regular year. We're going into, summer school, season 9,
Summer
right?
school.
But yeah, the regular season 9 year will be over.
Mhm.
We start in season 10 in September, just insane.
Mhm.
That's crazy.
It is kind of funny as I would this is exactly what occurred to me as I was coming down the stairs this morning to the basement studio that everyone gets to see. Um, I'm like, damn, I've been doing this for coming up on 10 years, longer with our own sort of gigs, but like 10 years. Holy crap.
I would love an episode where we just talk about where we started and where we've arrived and all the changes that have occurred in between. I'd like to do.
I don't even know I could fathom that. I'd have to you would definitely have to sort of like cue me up on that. I don't know if I've tracked the ball that well. Like I have a sense of acumen, like we're here, like obviously 381 episodes.
But even looking at our families, look at where our kids were,
That is true.
where our kids are now. Like it's insane that to me, it's insane. When I think the other day, somebody asked me about my kids, and I told them my kids' ages, and I was like, oh my God. One of my kids is an adult. He's a legal adult, and the other one's on his way there. And it's just like, it doesn't feel that way to me. It doesn't seem that to me. Even when I think about becoming 50 this coming school year, I'm like, oh my God, I'm one of those guys now. I'm one of those guys that when I was in my 20s and 30s, I know I would look at them and be like, that old dude is cranky and doesn't know what he's talking about. And that's me now.
It's you, man.
It's kind of cool. And it is neat to listen to the younger people and be like, I remember having a little bit of that energy that I'm
Mhm,
seeing in them. And then I think to myself, well, I'm in a different space now. I'm in a different space. I'm different thoughts, different experiences. Um, I'm still experiencing worlds colliding. People from elementary now dealing with me in secondary,
mhm.
and they like, well, do you miss X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, no. And they're like, but you were all about X, Y, and Z. And I said, that's where I was at the time. Those were my interests. I'm in a different space, different time, different interests. Like, really, who would have ever thought of where I am today? It's such a big jump when you don't consider the time it might take and the qualifications and the connections, right? Like, let's be honest, you need to there's a little bit of luck. Kind of in my experience moving from elementary to secondary, there's been some luck. I've put in the work, but that's not it, just because you put in the work doesn't mean things are going to happen.
Mhm.
So anyway, just kind of considering all that stuff is wacky to me now.
I like it.
Maybe we can indulge as
Of
we
course we
as
who's
we
gonna
end
stop us,
nine.
bro? Who's gonna stop us? No
Maybe
one's coming to stop us.
no one's coming to stop us. Didn't you post something about
I
that?
did.
I love that. I was like over here with snicker on my face, and I'm like, who's gonna stop me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
That
dude.
was the adjustment. No one's coming to help you, and no one's coming to stop you.
Holy cow, Gary's like, I would have never have thought of being where I am now.
A decade, baby, a decade ago. Yep.
A decade ago, I'm trying to remember the first time I met Gary. I met Gary at a Super Bowl party.
Mhm.
That's where I met Gary for the first time. It was a million years ago. It was more than 10 for sure. And then who would imagine that Gary would be sitting here listening and watching our podcast on a Saturday
Oh,
morning?
yeah.
That's insane too. Anyway, well, dude, thought I would be a lifetime classroom teacher. It's weird, eh? At the time, you think things and then life happens. Life happens. You end up in spaces where when you stop and you look back, you're like, how did I get here? Even though there are little bits and pieces that had to be accomplished, had to be completed in order for us to arrive where we are today. It was all chunked. And the funny thing is where will we be in the next 5 to 10 years, right? Where will we be? We don't really know. We might have an idea of where we'd like to be, but that shifts. That shifts in a year, in 2 years. You're like, "I'm not doing that anymore. I have no interest in that. I have all interest in this," you know?
Episode 762.
Oh my god, I can't even imagine, but we'll see what happens.
Exactly. At some point, someone will invite us to do a public speaking gig.
You think so?
Oh,
About
it'll
what?
I don't know what. I don't know. In this whole post-influencer, post-EDU influencer world, I have absolutely it's funny. I now I mean, Twitter is so it's like a fond, distant memory. I haven't been on X now in a couple years actively. Uh, so whatever the edu babble that goes on out there now, I feel so like it's another planet. It's a total other planet, which is kind of cool. I kind of like that. I do wonder. I do wonder. And the only reason I mention that is that the eventuality, the eventuality is that I think the lived experience will at some point become important to someone. I do think one of us will be asked, they've come across our podcast and they're like, "Hey, do you think you'd want to come and do?" There'll be something that's associated to it. I really do believe like you can't put in 10 years into a public facing project without it somehow piquing somebody's interest.
See,
I think the odds are in our favor. And the fact that we don't market and we don't spin it out doesn't change the fact that we're openly offering the universe good content. And I do believe at some point that will bring something back to us. I do. I really do.
I think that
Part of my motivation to have this conversation all the time. It is part of it. Besides the friendship and my interest in the topic, is that I do believe that we are doing a better job of changing the face of education and how we talk about education than Voice Ed ever did. Steve, long live Stephen Hurley. But I'm just saying, for us to have stuck this out and stayed in the convo and gone beyond the now what? Yes, absolutely.
I think the opposite is, and I think that because we are not big, we are not catching attention,
Mhm,
that people don't pay attention, and that's okay. I love this space for what it is,
mhm.
what it has been, what it is currently. And my favorite thing to do is to talk about Decoded Podcast when people are like, "Oh, you have a podcast?" "Yeah." "Oh, what is it about?" And then it's like I smile because I'm like, 2 dads who are also educators, who are also husbands, growing and living each day, and they're still kinda like they're, like, just looking at you like, "How many years?" "We're in our 9th season." And then they're like, "And how come I've not heard of it?" "Well, because this is our little corner of the internet where you and I don't really care about marketing it or creating it in a way that we try to elevate it to something that it's not. This is what it is, and we just do it, and it works for us." So selfishly, I love what this is because to me, it's still pure. It's not been transformed. It has transformed, but not in a way like to sell out or to constantly be shifting to be measured in a way that people measure things like this as productive or successful. This is successful because we make it successful for us. That's why I think it'd be neat to talk about this in another way, at another level, but I'm just so happy we're buried here in the corner and we're just doing our thing. We've been doing it for 9 seasons. And you're right, before that we had things. And we were doing things, I would say we were doing them more in the way that people would assume that a podcast would run. At least mine was operating that way. But then it became a project that needed to end. But I wasn't ready to end. I was ready for it to go. But
Mhm.
then we made this happen, and here we are today. So we'll see what comes of it, but man, I don't know. I'm just grateful for it. It could end any time.
Of
Who knows,
course.
right? Like, it could. And if it did, it'd still be really I don't know who an another non-popular podcast that has gone on this long. Well, I guess there might be a million of them, we just don't know because we don't know where to look or nobody advertises, right? So I don't know what's out there, what's not out there. That's not mainstream and popular, you know? Anyway, there's my little spiel, and I changed my little tagline here at the bottom of my image. You can do it if you want, I guess.
Okay.
So I went from "Don't do it at all" to, "Well, whatever, do what works for you this
Yeah,
week. Who knows what it'll look like next week."
exactly. I like that flex. There's the flex.
We're on the
There's the flex.
flex.
Flexibility. Will you put the flex in flexibility? Flex dash ability.
You've turned it into a special ed thing. I like
I
that.
think I have. Sorry. I did. I did. I totally did. Let's sound
Um,
it out, kids.
well, thanks Rochelle and Gary and whoever else checked us out for checking us out,
For
and,
sure.
thanks, Gary and Rochelle, for your comments. Gary, you and I are gonna have to talk about how we sorry, the things we intentionally place in our office.
Mhm.
I know I've got some artwork that's going into mine. Decoded artwork, baby. Um, it's coming in, and maybe a
Next
couple of other things.
next week, I want to talk a little bit about resource rooms.
Like the room I work in? Or
Well, we'll
different
have to
than that?
we'll come to common ground just so that we are in the same conversation because I think there's similarities but some striking differences in how your rooms are run
Mhm.
and the rooms at my school are run. I will say, oh, and I may have some more interesting data to share. My department head is going into some kind of big conversations with, at some point, are going to go into some big conversations around some new thinking about how we're going to be using our resource room. So that alternative space for students with an IEP. And what I think is kind of special about it is that we have consensus in our department about how we want to move forward with the idea. And part of it will entail how we change our own office space and how we exist in our office space. So I'll do that as much of a teaser, but it basically is one of those things that the only way it would work, and this is why it's connected with staffing, is that kind of everybody in the department is going to have to operate a different way. And no one can actually tell us to operate that way. It's entirely something that we're seeing as teachers that we want to operate that way. I'll give just a quick different example before we bust out. 2 years ago, the teachers decided to take on a project of monitoring bathrooms. So teachers were volunteering their prep time and their lunch time to take a shift to sit outside the bathrooms and redirect people and control the flow into the bathrooms. And that year, that the vaping in the bathroom was reduced, the silliness in the bathrooms was reduced because kids were no longer permitted to wander hall. We did like like a what's that called? Not a sweep, it basically it was just all the teachers were on board, and by doing that, we created change. Now, it didn't stay because the next year the teachers couldn't get to an agreement. They didn't keep doing it. So, but that was something that OSSTF had said, we can't tell the teachers to do this. Like it can't be a thing. And admin could not tell us to do it either. It was entirely a challenge of practice that the teachers took on. So our department is taking on this challenge of practice. And some of it, though, will shake the current system that has been established, but it's going to shake it in, I think, in a good way. And part of what I think will help make this change happen, and it is so that we stay in service to the kids that we are aligned with, which is the kids with IEPs. But it's going to create some chaos. So maybe next week I'll have more information about what that chaos looks like and whether or not everyone is still on board. Because sometimes when it's an idea, everyone's like, yeah. And then you start to get a little pushback and people are like, whoa. So we'll see if everyone stays brave. If everyone stays frosty, we can do it.
Cool.
And of course, I'll prime you offline. I won't put it on. I won't put it here yet, but I'll tell you what's going on in a polo or something.
Sounds good.
All right, man.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for checking us out. Have a great long weekend. We'll catch you later. This was season 9, episode 33, number 381 of Declutter Podcast. Peace.
Peace, dude.